Think about what happens when a glass slips off a table. In a fraction of a second, your brain calculates the trajectory, and your hand snaps around it before it hits the floor. It is an automatic, subconscious sequence of reasoning. We do this with thoughts, too. We constantly process environmental cues and reach conclusions. But for most of human history, we had no idea how this internal machinery worked. We used logic much like we breathed oxygen, long before anyone knew what to call it or how to measure it. Before we could map these methods, we had to agree on what reality even was. In ancient Greece, the dominant view belonged to Plato. He believed in the theory of forms, the idea that the physical world we walk around in is merely a flawed shadow of a higher, invisible realm. This diagram illustrates his concept. If you draw a circle on the ground, it will always have bumps and irregularities. Plato argued you only know what a circle is because a perfect version exists somewhere in a higher realm. To access true knowledge, you couldn't rely on your senses. You had to look upward, using pure reason to find truths your soul already knew. By pointing our attention exclusively toward this invisible plane, Plato created a philosophical system that discouraged looking closely at the actual messy world around us. Then came Aristotle. Born in 384 BCE, he was the son of a physician to the Macedonian king. Growing up around medicine gave him an early obsession with biology and strict physical observation. He moved to Athens and spent 20 years as Plato's brightest student. Yet despite his respect for his teacher, Aristotle rejected his idealism. He argued that the soul and the body are united. They cannot exist independently in separate realms. Aristotle's stance was practical. Why invent a second world? He argued that reality is located in the objects themselves. Truth and knowledge must begin strictly with physical experience, with what we can touch, see, and observe right here on Earth. But this created a problem. If truth is found in the chaotic physical world rather than a higher plane, we need a reliable set of rules to extract and verify it. Aristotle was the first to name and classify these mental processes, moving human reasoning from a subconscious habit to a visible, structured system. Returning to Athens years later, Aristotle founded his own school, the Lyceum. This was a hub for systematic research, where he and his students gathered massive datasets on everything from animal behavior to ethics and politics. To process all this data, he outlined the first major method of logic, deduction. This is the ultimate mechanism of certainty. In deductive reasoning, if you have two premises that are true and accepted, they guarantee a true conclusion. This diagram shows how the logic locks together. Premise 1. Mammals feed on their mother's milk. Premise 2. The elephant is a mammal. If those two boundaries hold, the conclusion is certain. Baby elephants feed on their mother's milk. But deduction has a vulnerability. If you misapply the categories, you commit a fallacy. If you know zebras are striped, and you observe a striped animal in the wild, concluding it must be a zebra ignores the fact that tigers are striped too. Because we rarely have perfect mathematical premises in the real world, Aristotle identified a second pillar, inductive reasoning. This is the process of observing an outcome repeat over and over again until you can reasonably accept it as a general law. If you test iron, zinc, and copper and notice they all expand when heated, you inductively conclude that all metals expand when heated. Or if eating peanuts consistently causes you to break out in hives, you induce that peanuts cause an allergic reaction in your body. Induction rarely offers the 100% mathematical certainty of a deductive proof. You might always find an exception, but it is the bedrock that makes empirical science possible. Aristotle then categorized a third tool, analogy. In analogical reasoning, when a judgment holds true for one phenomenon, we naturally extend it to a similar one. For example, if your doctor tells you to stop playing tennis because you have a bad knee, you will likely conclude that playing football next week is also a bad idea. However, analogical conclusions are probabilistic. Seeing a stranger wearing the same luxury watch as a millionaire might lead you to assume they are also wealthy, but that ignores the reality of fakes, loans, or simple debt. By identifying these three methods, Aristotle replaced intuitive guessing with a deliberate system for evaluating evidence, changing how we test our own thoughts. Aristotle's logical map was so robust that it sat largely unchanged for over 2,000 years. It wasn't until the late 19th century that American philosopher Charles Sanders Peirce identified a critical fourth method. Peirce called it abductive reasoning, or inference to the best explanation. The mechanism works backward. You observe a phenomenon, envision several hypotheses for how it happened, and select the most probable explanation based on the available evidence. To see how powerful this is, look at evolutionary biology. For years, scientists looked at ancient short-necked fossils alongside the long-necked giraffes of today and tried to explain the change. The scientist Lamarck hypothesized that giraffes stretched their necks to reach high leaves, passing that stretch down to their offspring. But years later, Charles Darwin proposed a superior hypothesis. He reasoned that a scarcity of low-hanging food allowed a minority of naturally long-necked variants to survive and reproduce. Darwin's natural selection explained the physical evidence better than Lamarck's stretching theory. You can test this reasoning yourself on historical mysteries. Take the birth of Jesus. Scripture presents the hypothesis of a divine miracle. Historians present a competing hypothesis, that the narrative was constructed to shield the prophet from claims of illegitimacy. As an exercise in abductive logic, you have to weigh which hypothesis better explains the historical context. The beauty of abductive reasoning is that it is never definitive. It demands that we remain intellectually flexible and update our beliefs the moment a more logical hypothesis presents itself. The division between Plato and Aristotle established a lasting debate in Western thought, whether truth exists in abstract concepts or in physical data. To truly understand our world, we need both perspectives. Plato gave humanity the vision to seek out meaning and higher ideals, but it was Aristotle, the realist, who gave us the practical, logical method to actually find it. Thanks for staying until the end. It truly means a lot. If this video spoke to you, like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss what's ahead. This is a space for philosophy, psychology, and science to expand the way you see life.